Okay, welcome back everybody. We are going to do the final installment of the screencast lecture series, Theory of Plate Tectonics. Today we're going to talk about transform boundaries. A little close to the camera there, buddy. How you feeling tonight? Good. You're a little sleepy, I understand. It's getting kind of late, so we need to go to bed soon. But anyways, let's talk about a quick review. The first plate boundary type is divergent boundary. This is where two plates move apart. That's divergent. And the next one, though, is a convergent boundary. And do you remember what a convergent boundary is? What do the two plates do?
Collide.
Excellent. Very good. When the two plates collide, it's called a
convergent boundary.
Perfect. Nice job. Okay, let's talk about how the plates collide. It's called a convergent boundary. Boundary type that was focused in on our song, The Plate Tectonics, Convergent Boundaries. So hopefully you'll know a lot about that one, the convergent boundaries. Convergent boundaries is where two or more plates collide. And now moving on to transform boundaries, this is going to be a pretty easy in terms of note-taking episode. It's not going to be a whole lot to do, so let's just kind of chill, relax, and learn about the wonderful world of transform boundaries. Now, plates sliding past each other form a transform boundary. One of the main features to look for at a transform boundary is to expect earthquakes. That's going to be a very, very common happening at a transform boundary. You have one plate, and then you have another plate, and one plate is moving south, one plate is moving north, sliding past one another, and sometimes there's a lot of tension build up, and they'll slip suddenly, and you might get a tremendous amount of energy released in an earthquake. What to not look for, do not look to see volcanoes at a transform fault. Earthquakes, yes. Volcanoes, no. Why?
Yo, baby, yo.
Should we see a volcano? Yellow.
Ain't no subduction. Ain't got no subduction. No, baby, no.
Definitely something that I would expect you to know. The main reason is that you are not going to have subduction of plates. Remember, the two plates are just sliding past one another. One of them is not being subducted. You need to have the two oceanic plates, or one oceanic plate and one continental plate, to expect subduction and expect to see volcanoes. The number one example that I would expect you to know for the transform boundary is the San Andreas Fault. A lot of you guys have probably heard of this. This is in California, and if you take a look at a map of California, you will see the San Andreas Fault goes north-south throughout most of the state. And you probably heard maybe somebody say something like, oh, someday California's going to fall into the ocean. That's, not really probably what's going to happen. But what the problem is that this part of the state is moving south, this part of the state is moving north. That's kind of a problem when you got a quarter of the state going in a different direction from the rest of the state. Are very aware of this. This is going on. I mean, they even have signs that show where you are in terms of leaving what plate boundary. So if you want to put away your notes now, you can. Here's an aerial view of the San Andreas Fault. Pacific plate, North American plate. I kind of like this picture. It's very subtle, but if you look at it, you don't have to have big, gigantic, dramatic earthquakes to have interesting things happen. Take a look at this road. You can see that caused part of this road to go this direction, part of this road to go this direction, and they have to do frequent repairs. This one is definitely much more dramatic when a big earthquake struck. Here, this fence used to be here. You can see this whole section has been shifted over quite a few feet.
These giant gashes in the Earth are reminders of our planet's awesome power. They are fault lines, fractures in the Earth's crust where huge slabs of rock slowly grind past each other. Most faults we can't see, but here in California, the San Andreas Fault is visible at the surface.
You can't have an earthquake without a fault. And I'm standing right now on what is perhaps the most famous fault in the world, the San Andreas Fault, that extends from Mexico down south, way up to Oregon in the north. This is one of the few places in the world where you can stand with 1 foot on one tectonic plate and one on another. In other words, this ground here is attached to New York and Iceland. The ground here is attached to Hawaii and Japan.
The San Andreas Fault sits on the boundary between the North American and Pacific plates. It's called a strikeslip fault, a place where 2 plates collide and try to slip past each other. As these plates move or creep in different directions, sometimes they get stuck. The longer they stay stuck, the more tension builds and the bigger the eventual quake.
Okay, way back in 1989, I remember being in college and watching the World Series. A really strange thing happened. A very unusual, rare thing occurred when first of all, they had the San Francisco Giants playing the Oakland A's, and the cities are right next to each other, right across the bay from one another. And during one of the games, I can't remember which one it was, but there actually, right before the game started, an earthquake struck, and it was a pretty big deal, and it was pretty scary for a lot of people. Imagine being in the stadium and seeing it. I remember watching the beginning of the game and having this happen. So try to put yourself in the place of a viewer in 1989.
Background, and we zoom into Candlestick Park in the southeastern corner of the city. For the first time in 27 years, a World Series game will be played in Candlestick Park. The Battle of the Bay continues. Game 3 of the 1989 World Series, the Oakland Athletics against the San Francisco Giants.
The score, and he fails to get Dave Parker at second base, so the Oakland A's take.
I'll tell you what, we're having an earth. I don't know if we're on the air or not, and I'm not sure I care at the moment, but we are. Well, folks, that's the greatest open in the history of television, bar none. Yes, it certainly did. We're still here. We are still, as we can tell, on the air, and I guess you are hearing us, even though we have no picture and no return audio. And we will be back, we hope, from San Francisco in just a moment.
Now in San Francisco, where they took the brunt of this earthquake today, George.
The city is in gridlock. I hate to paint a dire picture, but it's the kind of scenario where you see looting happening sometime in the night.
I need an ambulance.
Hold on, I'll transfer stand by.
Prepare yourselves! Shut off the gas! Shut off electricity! Store water in your bathtub! Don't expect services for 72 hours!
The city of San Francisco, again, as we take a look at that, that appears to be what would be the
The block of Divisadero is practically entirely on fire. The house on the right is the first one that went, and it went because...
Back in 1906, San Francisco suffered a major earthquake, and I think this is pretty neat. Here's some footage from what San Francisco would have looked like in 1906. This is before the earthquake. And what I think is cool about it is just seeing the mixture of horses and cars. And coming up here, you see the famous streetcars in San Francisco. And look at the police officer, how the uniforms are different, all the people on bicycles. It's really pretty neat. This is 1906. My grandfather would have been 5 years old. Yes, then the earthquake hit, and it was very devastating. Over 3,000 people were killed. The property damage was huge. And what's interesting is that this would have been one of the first natural disasters to have been widely filmed, and you can see this as actual moving pictures. And remember, this is 1906, and just the Wright brothers had just invented the airplane very recently. I just like this picture. This was, some people believe that animals can be a sign, like if they start acting very strangely, that could be a sign that an earthquake is imminent. And there has been some anecdotal evidence of this, like for example, these frogs in China. Somebody filmed frogs kind of going crazy, almost like a stampede of frogs, and then shortly after that there was a large earthquake. Well, thanks for joining us. That's all we have for you tonight, and we hope you learned something, and hope you have a great evening. Catch you next time.
Tectonics.